Curiously, many of these songs did not seem destined to survive the test of time. They were too raw, too strange, too specific to a moment that felt like it would pass. But something happened. They burrowed into the memory of an entire generation and refused to leave. Today, we are going to remember 10 songs from the 80s that no one should have forgotten. Pay close attention to number 1 because its story is just as intense as its chorus. No. 10. Hysteria by Def Leppard, November 1987. A band that had nearly collapsed under the weight of its own tragedy finally released a song that didn't sound like survival. It sounded like triumph. Hysteria arrived not with a roar, but with a slow, deliberate shimmer, guitars wrapping around you like something warm and inevitable. The album it lived on was almost an act of defiance. Robert John Mutt Lange polished every layer, every harmony, every breath of every chorus, while the band clawed its way back from years marked by Rick Allen's accident and a recording process that refused to end. Lesser bands would have broken. Def Leppard didn't break. They built a machine. When it reached radio, Hysteria reached No. 10 on the Billboard Hot 100. The album itself climbed to No. 1 on the Billboard 200 and stayed there for 6 weeks. The numbers confirmed what ears already knew. People remember Pour Some Sugar on Me first. They remember Love Bites. But Hysteria holds a different kind of power, the kind that doesn't age through volume but through atmosphere. It doesn't hit you. It surrounds you. And then it never quite lets go. No. 9. Runaway by Bon Jovi. Before the stadiums, before the arena anthems, before the world knew his name, Jon Bon Jovi handed a cassette to a New York radio station and waited. February 1984. He was still finding his footing, hungry, ambitious, completely unknown, and this nervous, nocturnal song was the only card he had left to play. Runaway had been recorded earlier, before the classic lineup even existed. Session musicians played on it. The band the world would come to know hadn't fully taken shape yet. Even so, the song landed on the compilation New York Rocks and started moving. An unknown young man, hungry for stardom, had thrown something into the current, and it floated. It reached No. 39 on the Billboard Hot 100. Not a chart explosion, not a defining moment in real time, but in retrospect, everything. Runaway keeps something the bigger hits can't replicate, the sound of a door opening for the very first time. It is the first flash of a band that hadn't yet conquered the world, but already sounded like it was running straight toward it, and nothing would stop it after this. No. 8. Don't Change by INXS, October 1982. INXS was not yet the band that would fill arenas across 3 continents. They were Australian, restless, and still learning what they were. Don't Change didn't announce greatness. It promised it urgently, with no room for doubt. The song came from Shabu Shuba, their 3rd album, and it moved differently from what was around it. New wave guitars, a bar rock pulse, a forward-driving energy that never once looked back. Everything felt contained but coiled tight, ready to snap. Michael Hutchence carried it without trying to impress anyone. He pushed from the inside, firm, physical, with that exact blend of desire and melancholy that would later become his signature. Mark Opitz produced it clean and direct. The song reached No. 80 on the Billboard Hot 100, a modest number for something that burned so specifically. INXS wasn't huge yet, but they already sounded like they were from somewhere else, somewhere the rules didn't apply. Don't Change was the proof. The world just hadn't caught up. No. 7 Eyes Without a Face by Billy Idol. The title came from a French horror film, Les Yeux Sans Visage, 1960, a black and white nightmare about desire, obsession, and the terrifying emptiness behind a beautiful surface. Billy Idol didn't just borrow the image, he built a song inside it. Released in April 1984 and included on Rebel Yell, Eyes Without a Face was written by Idol and Steve Stevens and produced by Keith Forsey. The leather, the fists, the rebellious snarl, all of it stepped aside. What emerged instead was wounded, nocturnal, almost ghostly. The French voice in the chorus belonged to Perry Lister, Idol's partner at the time. It gave the song a strange cinematic chill, like something overheard through a wall at 3 a.m. Then Steve Stevens broke the calm with a harder guitar, the ballad's hidden storm finally surfacing. The contrast worked. Eyes Without a Face reached No. 4 on the Billboard Hot 100 and became Billy Idol's first top 10 hit in the United States. Among his most explosive anthems, this one still shines for a different reason. It doesn't hit you head-on. It stays there watching. No. 6. Run to You by Bryan Adams. Bryan Adams and Jim Vallance wrote it with Blue Oyster Cult in their headphones. They had been listening to Don't Fear the Reaper, that slow, dark, inevitable song, and from that atmosphere they built a riff that would become impossible to ignore. The song that came out, released in October 1984, wasn't about love. It was about wanting something you shouldn't want and running toward it anyway. Run to You was included on Reckless, Adams' fourth studio album. The premise was direct but dangerous, a man with a stable life who still runs towards someone he has no business finding. The song moved the way the story demanded. Forward, relentless, unable to stop. It reached No. 6 on the Billboard Hot 100 and hit No. 1 on Billboard's rock chart. The numbers didn't lie. Among so many bright anthems of the era, this one stood out precisely because it refused to be clean. It wasn't about perfect love. It was about a temptation impossible to let go. There's a difference, and Run to You understood it completely. No. 5. I Hate Myself for Loving You by Joan Jett. Desmond Child sat across from Joan Jett in a writing session, and they built a song out of wounded pride and contradiction. June 1988. The result didn't sound like a confession. It sounded like a fight. Included on Up Your Alley, the sixth album by Joan Jett and the Blackhearts, the song was produced alongside Kenny Laguna's stadium-sized power with streetwise attitude still fully intact. Guitars up front, a raspy voice refusing to apologize, a chorus designed to be shouted without asking for forgiveness. What most people didn't know was who played the guitar solo. It was Mick Taylor, former guitarist of the Rolling Stones. That classic, razor-edged presence lifted a song already loaded with anger, desire, and the specific kind of pain that comes from loving someone you know is wrong for you. The song reached No. 8 on the Billboard Hot 100 and received a Grammy nomination for Best Rock Performance by a Duo or Group with Vocal. Among so many male-driven anthems of the decade, Joan Jett left behind something different. Direct, proud, and brutally unforgettable. No. 4. If I Could, Turn Back Time by Cher. Diane Warren brought the demo to Cher, and Cher said no, she didn't want it. The melody, the structure, the vulnerability of it, none of it felt right to her in that moment. Warren pushed, Warren insisted, and from that friction came one of the defining songs of 1989. Released in June of that year and included on Heart of Stone, her 19th album, If I Could Turn Back Time, was not a gentle regret. It was Cher singing as if she wanted to physically wrestle time to the ground. A huge, dramatic voice, full of wounded pride, refusing to accept what couldn't be undone. Then came the music video. Director Marty Callner filmed aboard the USS Missouri with real sailors watching, as Cher performed in a Bob Mackie design that left very little to imagination. The image was so provocative, MTV moved it to late-night airplay only. The outrage made the song immortal. The song that almost never existed, the one Cher nearly walked away from, reached No. 3 on the Billboard Hot 100 and hit No. 1 in Australia. It pulled her back to the center of the conversation with nothing but force, spectacle, and a voice that had no interest in being quiet. The script for this moment had already been written the instant Cher first heard that demo and turned it down. Some songs need resistance to become what they were always meant to be. No. 3. Poison by Alice Cooper. 12 years. That's how long it had been since Alice Cooper last placed a song in the American Top 10. 12 years of watching the scene he had helped build get taken over by bands who borrowed his darkness and sold it back to a younger audience. Then came July 1000. 989. Then came Poison. Included on Trash, his 18th studio album, the song arrived precisely when late 80s hard rock was at peak saturation. Makeup, sharp guitars, dangerous attitude everywhere you looked. Alice Cooper didn't need to copy the scene. In a way, he had helped invent it. And Poison reminded everyone of that fact in 4 minutes flat. The production was surgical. John McCurry's razor-sharp riff beneath an almost whispered vocal, building toward a chorus that crushed everything in its path. The music video, Shadows, Chains, Controlled Menace made clear that what returned was not a nostalgia act. It was a threat that had simply been dormant. Poison reached number 7 on the Billboard Hot 100 and climbed to no 2 inches, the United Kingdom. 12 years between top 10 hits. Nobody gets that window back. Alice Cooper walked through it anyway. No, To Kickstart My Heart by Mötley Crüe. Nicky Sixx wrote it from the edge of death. He had overdosed, been clinically dead for approximately 2 minutes, and woke up in a hospital with the image of a restarted heart fixed in his mind. What came out of that wasn't grief. It wasn't gratitude. It was a song that sounded like someone daring the world to try and stop them again. Released in November 1989 and included on Dr. Feelgood, their 5th studio album, produced by Bob Rock, which reached no. 1 on the Billboard 200 and sold more than 6 million copies in the United States alone. Kickstart My Heart was speed, engines, screams, and pure adrenaline compressed into 4 minutes and 30 seconds. It reached no. 27 on the Billboard Hot 100 and received a Grammy nomination for Best Rock Performance. The numbers don't tell the full story. They never do with songs like this. Few tracks capture the vertigo, the danger, and the specific madness of 80s rock with that kind of precision. Kickstart My Heart was a survival anthem wearing the disguise of a party, and the disguise was perfect. No. 118. And Life by Skid Row. Rachel Bolan sat down and wrote about a boy named Ricky, 18 years old, a gun, 1 moment of rage, and then a life sentence handed down before the boy even knew who he was going to become. June 1989. Skid Row released their debut album and buried this song somewhere in the middle of it, not realizing it would outlast almost everything around it. Written by Bolan and Dave Snake Sabo, 18 in Life was hard rock with the soul of a street tragedy, not about lost love or broken relationships, about a life destroyed before it began, about the specific, irreversible weight of 1 fatal second. The bridge before the chorus builds slowly, almost quietly, every note tightening the tension, each guitar phrase pressing the story closer to the moment that cannot be taken back. And then Sebastian Bach tears it open. His voice could start nearly restrained, measured, almost gentle, and then seconds later rip the song apart with brutal, aching intensity. That kind of range wasn't common in 1989. It still isn't. The song reached number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100 and climbed to no 12 inches, the United Kingdom. It became Skid Row's biggest song not because it was the loudest or the fastest, but because it meant something specific and true. A warning turned into music, a life destroyed by 1 moment, and a destiny that could no longer be changed. That is what separates a chart hit from a song that stays. Charts are forgotten. Ricky isn't. Here ends the journey through 10 songs from the 80s that no one should have forgotten. Songs that don't always appear in the usual rankings. Songs that sometimes got buried under bigger names and louder anthems. But they held on through decades of playlists, through every shift in sound and taste and technology. They held on because they carried something real inside them. A specific year, a specific fight, a specific human moment that refused to be erased. The songs that survive aren't always the ones that topped the charts. They're the ones that told the truth about desire, about recklessness, about the price of a single bad decision, about loving someone you know will destroy you. The 80s had no shortage of noise. What it also had, quietly underneath all that noise, was this. 10 songs that earned their place in memory, and kept it.